Hello, and welcome to this introduction to the work of Stennis Historical Society. My name is Fiona, and I am a robot. This video was made by David Kennedy, whose main responsibility is creation of the Cantonment maps and the research behind them. I will explain about the maps shortly. Our society conducts research on the decade following the Battle of Culloden in Scotland. We have a website, a Twitter feed and a YouTube channel which will be referred to later. The Cantonment map shows the locations of British Army troops in Scotland in the years 1746 to 1756. In this presentation, I'm going to describe why the Cantonment map was developed. I'll also show examples of the different forms of the map and describe why they address particular issues in depicting the information. The original Cantonment map showed each location of British Army troops as a red dot. Later on, these locations were divided into 5 cantonment types with different colored icons. A further iteration of the map shows the location names, as well as these static, printable maps. I'll also describe the interactive online map and the animation which shows the cantonments occupied during particular years from 1746 to 1756. Before describing these maps in detail, I'll quickly give some background information on what led to the maps being developed. Members of Stennis Historical Society research and transcribe contemporary manuscripts from the decade just mentioned. Transcription involves reading manuscripts and typing them out for publication on our website, in PDF format. Reading the manuscripts can be a challenge, especially as we had faded photocopies of some of them, and the handwriting, terms and abbreviations used can be confusing. The Society was formed in 2017 following a series of lectures on Scottish history by historical author Stuart McHardy. He mentioned the existence of a manuscript called the Cantonment Register, which is stored at the library of the National War Museum at Edinburgh Castle. He had photocopies of that manuscript and others, and those attending the lectures decided to form a society to transcribe and publish the manuscripts. The Cantonment Register lists the locations of the British Army in Scotland during the years 1746 to 1752, plus details of some of the marches between these locations. The term cantonment refers to where the troops stayed, whether an overnight camp or a long-term barracks in a castle or other fortified building. We have also found records in other manuscripts for those years and beyond. It was decided to plot the locations of the cantonments on a map to show the geographic distribution. Initially they were all represented with a red dot, with no indication of how long they were occupied or how many troops were there. It became apparent that this could be misleading, as the casual observer might believe that all the locations had been occupied simultaneously by large numbers of soldiers. There was therefore a need to introduce a time element and to distinguish between different cantonment types. The cantonments were divided into 5 categories, each with a differently colored icon and description in the key. The yellow temporary camps could be distinguished at a glance from the purple long-term camps and the red fortifications. Something still missing from the map, however, was the name of each cantonment. An interactive version of the map is available online. In fact, the original static printable map was produced from screenshots of it. Clicking on one of the icons shows the range of years the cantonment is known to have been occupied, along with its Gaelic name. Links are given to the same location on a modern Ordnance Survey map and on the 1750s Roy military maps on the National Library of Scotland website. It should be noted that the range of occupation of a cantonment consists of the years for which we have discovered documentary evidence, usually from 18th-century manuscripts. If a particular year isn't mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean the location wasn't occupied by soldiers, it just means we have no satisfactory evidence so far. If I click on the link for the Roy military map, this is what will be seen. There is a slider at the bottom of the information box, and moving it makes the Roy map fade away and a 1920s Ordnance Survey map appears in its place. If I'd clicked on the other link on the Cantonment map, an up-to-date Ordnance Survey map would have been shown instead of this 1920s one. The interactive map shows the name of the cantonment when you click on the icon, but the original static map still didn't show the name of the location, just a color-coded icon. A new style of static printable map was produced, which gives the names of the cantonments. This is available for download from our website in both A3 and A0 sizes. The A0 version has a lot more location names on it, as the larger size means that cantonments which are close together can be shown, whereas on the A3 map the names would be overwriting each other and not be legible. Therefore, if you are viewing one of them on a computer rather than printing it out, selecting the A0 version and zooming in means you will see a lot more names than with the A3 version. I'm going to move on from maps shortly. But first I'll describe the yearly cantonment animation. Although the interactive map shows the years of occupation of a single cantonment when you click on it, it would be nice to see all those cantonments which were occupied during a particular year. And only those ones. This is where the yearly cantonment animation comes in. It can be seen as an animated GIF on our Twitter account and as a video on our YouTube account. Here I'm going to step through the years a little more slowly. Starting with 1746, the year of Culloden. We can see a good spread of cantonments around the Central Belt and the Highlands, with some further north and a few on the Western Isles. There are a few near the English border and more will be seen there in later years. In 1747 there are no cantonments shown in the Western Isles and none far north of Inverness, except for Kirkwall, which only features in this one year. We know of no cantonments further north than Kirkwall, and that is why Shetland doesn't feature in the maps. To show Shetland at the correct distance and not in a box would mean reducing the size of the mainland greatly and make everything less legible. A new cantonment type which didn't appear in 1746 is the green-coloured staging post, of which there are a few between the English border and the Central Belt. These were single night stops used repeatedly by different regiments as they marched north. Although the same is likely to have happened in 1746, we haven't yet found any contemporary records to show that. In 1748 troops were temporarily in the Western Isles and along the north coast of the mainland. They were collecting weapons which were being surrendered under the disarming acts. The locations in the Western Isles were reused in later years as military posts, along with extra ones. There are a couple of black icons showing a man with a shovel. This represents a road-building waypoint, which is a newly added feature. It indicates that soldiers were building new sections of military road or repairing sections swept away by floods the previous winter. These waypoints are just points on the route and not cantonments, as we don't know the exact locations of the temporary camps as they worked their way along. However, there were sometimes substantial numbers of men working on a section of road. For example, on the Black Mount near Glencoe, a total of 1,100 men from several regiments built the road there in 1752. We can see that in 1749 there are again no cantonments shown in the Western Isles. And there won't be any until the map for 1752. That could be due to lack of data rather than no soldiers having been posted there. There are also none in the far north, although that is likely due to the loyal clans, or at least loyal clan chiefs in that region. In 1750 the picture is pretty similar, but with only one of the previously used staging posts being recorded as in use. Again in 1751 things look similar. Although Stranraer and Ballantrae were not in use that year, as far as we know. In 1752 there were small posts in North Uist, but less in some parts of the Highlands. Then in 1753 there were large numbers of posts all down the Western Isles, and on the smaller inner islands of Canna and Egg. For 1753 and 54 these cantonments are described in one of the documents our Society transcribed, whose title begins, Buffs Regiment in the Western Isles, and it's available on the downloads page of our website. Military road building was continuing on the mainland. In fact, after a pause for the 45 Rising, it resumed after Culloden and continued for the rest of the decade being studied and beyond. However, the road building layer is a recent addition to the map and it will take a while to access the relevant manuscripts and extract the relevant data. We use original sources where possible. In 1754 we again see the posts all the way down the Western Isles, including several on the Isle of Skye and also along the east coast of the mainland. In 1755 the density of cantonments seems to have decreased somewhat on the mainland. But there is still a substantial presence in the Western Isles. In 1756, note all the fortifications that are still in use, shown with red icons. These include Bernera Barracks, Braemar Castle, Corgarth Castle, Edinburgh Castle, Fort Augustus, Fort William, Inversnaid, Stirling Castle, and Fort George, which was still under construction. Well, I'm going to leave the maps now and show you how to access the documents I've been talking about, which are downloadable from our website. On the home page there is a download link which leads to a list of documents which can either be viewed in the browser or downloaded. So, this is the download page. With the A0 and A3 size maps listed at the top of the list, most of the other items are transcriptions of manuscripts produced by Stennis, including the Cantonment Register and the Buffs in the Western Isles document referred to earlier. The other item has research document in its title, and this was used to publish the data which was used to create the cantonment maps. Let's take a look at this document by clicking on the link. The document appears in the browser window and can either be read there or can be downloaded by clicking on the down arrow at the top right of the page. I'm going to skip over the sections describing how the research was carried out, and show you the list of source documents. As you can see, there are a lot of them. Although about 75% of the cantonments appear in two of the documents we transcribed. The Cantonment Register and the Situation Reports. The latter describes what was happening around the cantonments when the soldiers were on patrol. Also, the Buffs Western Isles transcription contains a lot of the cantonments on those islands. One of the major reasons that there are so many source documents is that we wish to find out the range of occupation of each cantonment in years, and the relevant records are found in a variety of contemporary documents. Also, some cantonments are only mentioned in one or two documents. In order to establish the range of occupation dates and what regiments were present, a wide range of source documents have been searched, including contemporary newspapers. Under the section header, a web address can be seen for the equivalent source documents page on the Stennis website. That web page contains links to the majority of the source documents. That is, those which are publicly available online. Some of the manuscripts hadn't been digitized until we transcribed and published them on our website. The next few pages of the research document show the maps which have already been described in detail. Following them is a summary of the cantonments, prior to a lot more detail being given in the section after that. The summary of cantonments gives the English and Gallic names, the type of cantonment and its Ordnance Survey grid reference for locating it on a modern map. The final section of the research document contains the detailed cantonment records. This information is extracted from the database, which contains all research captured from source documents. An annotated example record is shown, with descriptions of the various fields. It starts with a header of generic information on the cantonment, such as its name, cantonment type, and Ordnance Survey grid reference is shown in the summary of cantonments table just looked at. Under that, it shows a line of information for each reference found to the cantonment in a source document. This includes the date, the regiment present, and the numbers of officers and men if stated. If a cantonment was a temporary camp only used once, it will have only the one such reference. However, some cantonments have over 50 references in a variety of source documents, and therefore 50 lines of information under the header of generic information just mentioned. This is ongoing research, and further information on cantonments and road building is being sought. The maps, animations, and the research document will be updated as this progresses. I hope this information has been of use to you. If you have any comments or suggestions for further videos, please let us know on our Twitter feed.